Well, we got to move along. It is time to bounce back to George. And George has a very interesting interview coming up. So, George, take it away.
Okay, this is an interview with Martin Jew, K5FLU of MFJ Enterprises from October of 2007. Good afternoon, Mr. Jew. It's nice to finally meet you.
Well, it's good to meet you too, George.
This is your office that we're in now. It's quite interesting, all these radios you've got in here. We'll talk more about those in a minute. When did MFJ start? What year?
MFJ started selling ham radio products in about October of 1972. But actually, MFJ started earlier than that, around 1969, when I came back to Mississippi State, to Starkville, to work on a PhD at Mississippi State University. Now, at that point, I had started an engineering design company, which was to design and build electronic circuits for research projects for the various departments at MSU. But it turns out that I found out pretty quickly that all I could do was all I could do if I did everything myself. So I figured that if I was going to get any bigger, faster, I had to work through other people. So I started to design some electronic products and have other people build it. Of course, being a ham radio operator since I was in high school, I built some ham products. And the two products that I built was active filters, because I had just taken a graduate course in active filters and had studied filter design when I was working for the military division of Magnavox for the Vietnam War. So I brought out two products. One was a CW filter and one was a sideband filter. And these were kits and these were filters you had to wire into your radio.
Now, you're a native Mississippian, aren't you?
Well, I am. I was born in Vicksburg and grew up in a little delta town called Hollandale, which is south of Greenville. And in fact, my great-grandfather helped build the Transcontinental Railroad back in the late 1860s. There were about 2,000 Chinese that settled down there during that time period. And that was a group, and we pretty much all grew up in little grocery stores like that.
Did you ever think MFJ would grow to be as big as it is today?
Well, you know, we all have dreams, because I never thought it would get to this size. But when I named MFJ Enterprises, the reason I stuck Enterprises on there was because I wanted to grow. So
yeah,
it was always a push to keep growing. So. But, you know, never thought we would get to the point where we could have products in most ham radio operator stations.
Was there ever a time that you thought that you might have to shut the company down?
I was thinking like that every day for the first 15, 20 years. There were times when, you know, we were paying everybody else but myself, you know. So there were good times, there were bad times, but, you know, through all these years, these 35 years, we have never had one major layoff.
How many products do you think MFJ offers today?
Well, I'm not sure exactly how many, but it's over 2,000 different products.
Where does your inspiration come for most of these products?
It comes from just playing around with ham radio and recognizing a need for them, and talking to our ham radio friends and customers and finding out what they need.
What would you say is the most popular MFJ product?
Well, we've got two lines of products that are real popular. One is the antenna analyzer that will measure the characteristic of antennas.
That was going to be my guess. As a long-time broadcast engineer, I use bridges and synthesizer detectors and all that, and it's way too expensive for the amateur radio operator. And when I saw your antenna analyzer, I said, that's it. That's what we've been waiting for.
Well, that was a product that we had originated, and since then it's been copied throughout the world now. But the second line of products are the antenna tuners that we make.
I have one of those too.
Okay. Well, you know, every ham's got to have an antenna, and they have to have a way to match the antenna to the radio, so it's a very popular line of products.
And I will compliment you on the wide range of antenna tuners that MFJ offers. I mean, you've got something for the guy running illegal power all the way down to the guy who's just getting in and doesn't have a lot of money.
It's like a chicken in every pot.
Yeah. So what percentage of MFJ products are made here in the U.S.?
Well, I would think that's probably 90% of the products that we sell are made right here in Mississippi, right here in Starkville. And the other 10% are products that have a lot of plastic in it, and they are the less expensive products. They're things like clocks and watches and those kind of
commodity
things.
type of
Yeah,
stuff.
The commodity products.
Well, I would compliment you also on that, because I don't think any other major amateur radio manufacturer could make a claim to anywhere near 90% made in the U.S. today. Maybe a few antenna guys, but most of the electronics seem to be made overseas today.
At one time, we were going to set a factory up in Mexico, but we came back up here and decided that we could do it better in Starkville, and what we did was to automate a lot of the assembly so we could do everything here in Starkville.
Now, MFJ also owns Ameritron, Mirage, Vectronics, and High Gain. Did MFJ start those companies, or did you acquire them over the years?
Each one of those companies are old-time, well-known companies that we brought here to Starkville and revived them, built them up, added some new products, and now all of those companies are doing very well.
Tell us a little bit about the famous MFJ no matter what warranty.
In the beginning, we wanted to make sure that our customers was always satisfied with our products. And when I was growing up, Sears and Roebuck was the big company, and you know, we used to get this big thick Sears and Roebuck catalog, and you know, we just order it, and they had a you know, money back guarantee. So that's who we pattern that after. And if somebody buys a product from us, no matter what happens to it for a year, they buy it, they take it home in the back of a pickup truck, falls out, somebody runs over it, we'll give them another one or give them their money back.
Well, that's quite a guarantee. I was speaking with Richard a little while ago, and he mentioned this spiral-bound notebook sitting here in front of you. What's the story on those?
Well, that came about from my engineering background. Back when I was going to Mississippi State, we all had to keep notebooks, and during all the design and engineering, I always kept a notebook on all my designs, and I just extended it to my everyday business thing. So anytime I do anything, it ends up in my notebook. I start off with the date, and I mean, I record every phone call, recall most of our conversations, and just about everything is in this notebook. And I started doing this from the very beginning. And on this shelf over here, there's 35, 40 years worth of notes that I've taken throughout the years.
Wow. So this kind of predates the personal computer then, a number of years.
As a kid, you know, I didn't have much money, so I built my own transmitters and receiver like all the hams during the time period that I grew up. And, you know, a lot of the hams now will like to collect the very best of the radios, but the collection that I have were the low-end radios. These were the radios that were available to the young hams back then. So these are all the novice type, the beginner type radios, and they start from the 1940s through the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And for example, that little Heathkit transmitter, that gray box over here, was that was the very first transmitter that Heathkit brought out, and I think back in 1951. And the two boxes up there were early inexpensive receiver and transmitters that were available to the hams. And the Helicraft receiver over here is one that I had when I was a a novice. It was 1940s radios.
Wow.
So, and these were Heathkit beginner radio receivers and transmitters, and there's some QRP Heathkit, some old early Tentec radios, and there's some antenna tuners back in the 40s and the 50s, and the old Helicrafter radios, and some of the Johnson stuff. But these were the cheap radios back in its days.
Well, you can kind of see the progression of Heathkit through your shelf right there, and their different color schemes as they throughout the years.
Yeah, and I have a whole collection of shortwave radios back on the other side of the bookcase. The old beginner Heathkit shortwave radios here. And there's some old Helicrafter.
Yeah, that's some Tentec there, it looks like.
Yeah, Tentec antenna tuner, some Drake equipment, some Ally radio, some Lafayette radio, more Heathkit. There's one thing that's interesting that's behind you right there. See that gray? That's a Night Kit space banner that I built when I was in the 7th or 8th grade. Still got the original radio.
That is old. This looks like, to me, probably the most fun room here.
Yeah.
This is where you do your tinkering?
Yeah, I come back here after work and weekends and just play around, have a good time. This is an old regenerative tube-type receiver, an old tube-type transmitter I was thinking about building into a product for our hams to use. Well, it'll bring back some memories, and some of the young hams will find out what vacuum tubes are.
Exactly. They don't really teach that anymore, do they? That's interesting.
The problem is the power supply.
Yeah,
so,
the high voltage.
Yeah, you can't hardly get transformers, so what we're going to do is to make a little solid-state device that you plug into a 12-volt, and then from that 12 volts, it'll bring out the high voltage that's needed for these things. So it's a way of bringing back high voltage without going to expensive power transformers.
You spend so much time with ham radio as your business, as your long-time hobby. Do you ever have a chance to get on the air much anymore?
Well, I do. I don't get on the air every day, but I do get on the air. And what I like to operate is CW on 20 meters and 40 meters, and I usually operate very low power, 10 watts or below 10 watts. I even operate mobile CW using less than 10 watts.
Wow.
So, and I like to play with very crude antennas. I like to put antennas up in my bedroom just to see if I can get out and make contacts. This is stuff I'm playing with. See, this antenna would pull out to 12 feet long.
Good gracious.
And then this will, by itself, will operate up to 20 meters. Now, if you want to operate, say, 40 meters or 80 meters, just screw on this loading coil on here, and then you can operate whatever band you want. You take a counterpulse wire and just throw it on the floor. I added those feet, so if you use a real long whip antenna, you know, it'll still stay on there. Yeah, yeah.
Well, Mr. Jew, it's really been a pleasure talking with you today.
Well, George, it's very nice to meet you, and you've got a wonderful service here for us hams.